Hello, how are you doing? Today's focus, we are looking at performance preparation. So, whatever performance opportunities you are creating for yourself, whether it's busking or gigs or studio sessions or anything that is engagement with the live audience. However, in saying that, all of these preparation tools can be applied to things like house concerts, which you can live stream, or pre recorded video performances, which is something that I encourage highly all year round as a practice tool and a polish tool so that you can really get outside yourself and watch yourself back and critique positively always three things that you love about the performance and then three things that you want to work on so that you can use that information to inform your next practice session or to polish in advance of your next performance. So that's what we're looking at. And for me personally, a lot of these concepts and ideas I have been able to pull together through doing lots of different singing courses and most importantly, I think my own experience of performance. So a lot of this is like a combination of the big picture, what I've seen other people talk about, and what I myself like to do, and am in the process of pretty much kick starting now before I head away on tour. Technically, tour doesn't start for me until the end of this month, like the 30th of December. But as you'll see today, what I'm going to share with you are the big picture of preparing for performance, some of the little offshoots that can come up, like performance anxiety. And the performance preparation, like I said before, is for anything. So, whether it's studio or otherwise, all of these apply and they can be applied leading into the performance. So, kicking off, I have some slides. So, I'm going to show you the big picture first. So, the big overview of the big picture is really getting prepared in advance on every single level. Now, as it says here, performing in front of an audience can be great fun or it can be terrifying. The more that you perform, the more your skills will be refined. So, having or creating performance opportunities to work toward is the first step. Knowing also your strengths and weaknesses, when you're watching yourself back, you're thinking about what did I really enjoy about this performance? Always, I like to name three things, and what could I improve upon so that it can inform your practices and in turn your next performance opportunity. So, in my opinion, the best ways to prepare for a gig, performance, audition, session, or practice is to think about it from the get go moving forward. So, I like to think about all the production, any kind of movement aspects, and that can be down to what you're wearing because you want to feel comfortable and confident through to what tech you're going to be using. I like to think about exactly what I'm going to be doing on stage from walking on, setting up to walking off. Sound check is a great opportunity to do that. You also want to start thinking about movement elements, like how are you going to tell the story essentially? Like, how are you going to use that physical space and your physicality to be able to enhance storytelling of the song, and that can then informs so many things that it's like chicken or the egg. You're either working out what clothing might help or be more comfortable or impactful visually. Will that help if you're going to be dancing or moving a lot? So there are lots of things that you can factor in, but they can be a piece of that puzzle when it comes to what am I going to wear and how am I going to stand and what are my arm movements going to be, or how am I going to gesture? Warming up, of course, is an important part of both practice and performance preparation. And the warm up leading into different performance opportunities, so whether it's the studio or whether it's a live performance, the duration often can dictate how long you might end up warming up for. If you practice regularly, you might figure out, especially if you're vocal journaling and jotting things down, how long it takes you to feel warmed up within those variables that I like to consider. Have you had enough sleep? Have you had enough hydration? Is nutrition an element? Either you haven't eaten enough and you've got low blood sugar levels, or you've eaten something that might produce like a excess phlegm or reflux. So within those variables, hormones also warm up can adjust. So it's great to have pre-performance rituals, and I'll be talking about them later on. But I want you to be dynamic, just like you are with your voice, breath, and everything always adjusts based on what you're asking it to do. Same thing goes with your warm up. These are some of the causes of performance anxiety, which is often a roadblock to a successful performance because it doesn't let you enjoy yourself. It leans on the fear of what if XYZ. And these can be the causes of the performance anxiety. And so in the preparation phase, these are the ones I want you to have a think about. In fact, these are just good ones to check in with all the time. Lack of practice and preparation. That is hands down number one. So if you don't feel ready for the performance, that's going to be a challenge. Fear of being judged, fear of being inferior, not doing the job, fear of failing, fear of the unfamiliar. So making changes, your behavioral changes, your environmental changes, sleep, less caffeine, things that you know are going to hype you up or dampen your mood if you don't get enough sleep. And certainly mindset, which is what I just mentioned. But things like a pre-performance ritual, things you can, like what I like to think of hanging your hat on, a series of events. Now, the duration and the order can be flexible. Positive self-talk is important as well. And focusing on performance goals, I'll often sing through the set that I'm about to perform because I can visualize. It's an extension, it's a mental extension of what I did at soundcheck. And so I outlined some of these things. These are definitely things like stretches, your vocal warm up, eating at an optimum time. Rest is important if you haven't had a good enough sleep, like meditate, have what I call a disco nap. It's just a short sleep, maybe after sound check or on the day of the gig. This is a biggie. Controlling interaction with others prior to the performance is something that I'm refining as I get more experienced. I was going to say older, but more experienced as a performer. And what that is for me is certainly just to get my head in the game. And so what I'll do is I'll actually get ready completely in my hotel room, and then I will go to the show, and the performance starts when I leave the hotel room and the performance ends when I get back to the room. So I'm mentally and energetically conserving or allowing energy for all of those things, and then we'll hang out with the band and that's it. So we won't be talking to anybody else. Some people like to exercise the day of the performance, like maybe just a walk to go and clear your mind, or hitting the gym, getting sleep like we talked about, and limiting stimulants. So I mentioned that with caffeine in particular, but let it be known that I do drink a lot of coffee. So these aren't rules. These are guidelines that you can adapt because you know yourself better than anybody else. And so that's what I want you to think about when you're doing this: is what works for me? What's an ideal day for me? And how can I recreate that and guarantee that it happens whenever I'm performing? Now, one thing that I've learnt recently that I think is really cool is what performance magic actually is. And it's the combination of crafting. So, all the vocal healthcare habits, the daily rituals, all your practicing and all your polishing, that's your crafting. Align that with your artistry, and that's your intentional, conscious storytelling approaches that you're going to overlay onto any song, whether it's a cover or you're writing your own music. Those two combined really help to allow performance magic, or what I've referenced to here as creative expression. And so preparation, practice, perseverance, and patience and play are key pillars within this. Now, I have my main framework for performance confidence, which are preparation, and that's all your daily vocal care habits and looking after your vocal health. They're just the small things every day. Practicing a specific focused practice plan. Polishing, where you are reviewing your performances regularly, ideally with a video performance review or song study, I call it, taking a deep dive into the song and then performing. And so this can actually be applied to each of those stages as well. So this is what it looks like broken down. You want to enjoy the performance, and the preparation is 90% of the work that gets you to that performance preparation and confidence. The next step is practice. So we've talked about having lots of opportunities, tailoring your performance to to the different locations, gesturing, and that changes often depending on the space. So practicing smaller gestures, bigger gestures, because if you are on a big stage and you're just like making small movements, unless there are cameras picking up your every move, they're going to miss the small nuances. So you need to be able to adapt what happens if that visual element is important to you. This is a neat one when you are working with a bigger stage, even with a smaller stage as well. That's my 10, my 12, and my 2 o'clock. And I would engage by looking at each of the people just to bring them into things. And I think it's the same physically with your audience. That is something that you can consider. Now, we've already talked about watching your videoing and watching back your performances. This is like across the board, actually, practices, performances, and do have someone you trust to look back and give you constructive criticisms or critiques. I think it's great if you have like someone like a vocal coach or a fellow singing friend who understands the crafting that's gone into it and understands all the moving parts and can give you some really constructive feedback. But you know what? Ideally, I always want the buck to stop with you. So if you like a performance and you've been intentional with all of these things that we've talked about, and you're like, the reason I turned my back to the audience was because it was a moment in the song where I wanted to exclude them to make them feel the distance, like that, as long as it makes sense to you and it's not because you're shy or you just freaked out or because, all of those energetic considerations are relayed to the audience. They can see everything. So you want to be able to craft every moment of that experience for them, in my mind. That's what I like. Musicians who practice regularly do develop and extend their technical skill sets, which can open greater creative expression opportunities, aka improvisation. So you can be a bit more on the fly. We're almost there. Rehearse, 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 but rehearse in a focused and an efficient way. And this is helpful both with practicing and rehearsing if you know what it is that you need to get better at. Rather than just playing the song from top to bottom, if there are mistakes in it, spotlight the areas that you want to focus on and then insert it back into the song and play through. And on that, be patient. Perseverance is probably the secret, I think, with successful musicians, because they just keep going. And that's what makes you better. That consistency, always turning up for yourself, understanding progress and plateaus go hand in hand. There's no such thing as perfect, and done is better than perfect. That's a good FYI. Have a grand plan. I'm a massive planner. Even as a creative, I don't think those things are separate. I think they can go hand in hand. You keep the big picture in mind, and that helps on so many levels. If you have any questions about that performance preparation process, in particular the performance anxiety aspects, let me know. I mentioned also that I was going to share the big picture, which I just did, but then what that might look like if it was condensed down to, say, a month or at a pinch the 3 days prior. So look at the Get Gig Fit 30-day action plan. And you can see this is something that I might consider to have as a focus, one focus per day. So like right at the beginning with a month to go, these are the things I'm thinking about. What's next? Last but not least, if all else fails in the 3 days leading into the performance, the 72-hour pre-performance checklist is what you need. Checking in with your sleep, your hydration, reviewing your nutrition, marking at rehearsal and practices. So the 3 days prior is not the time to smash it out of the park. You really want to be conservative. You want to hit all your marks, but you don't want to go crazy. I hope that you found it helpful to see the performance preparation big picture, 50,000 foot view, moving into maybe a month prior, moving into what would I do in the 72 hours leading into a performance. Any questions, just yell out, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great one.